Hi, we're here today with Tara Cook-Littman, who's the Director of GMO-Free Connecticut, a group that's trying to get a bill through the legislature to label genetically modified organisms. And we're here today specifically to talk about a meeting that was held, Thursday?
I believe it was Friday.
Friday up in Wolcott Elementary School with Secretary of Agriculture Vilsack, and he was there with other state officials, and I think you had some issues with some of the things that he said. Somebody asked a question about GMOs, and he made the statement, I think, that scientists would say that GMOs are safe.
There is a disagreement about the safety of GMOs. I'm not sure that there's a reputable study that has suggested that there's a human health issue involved with GMOs.
And that's just not true.
Right.
There are many studies that show that there could be potential harm to human health. And when the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, says something like that, it's as if he's repeating the opposition propaganda. We have studies out of France from Dr. Seralini. This was the 2-year feeding study where rats developed massive tumors, suffered early death and organ damage. That certainly indicates that there's a potential threat to human health. And there are many other studies that suggest that there could be threats to human health. The only studies that suggest there are no threat to human health are conducted by the biotech industry, the very industry that benefits from the sale of GMOs.
Right, and I think he made the statement that we need to try to find a way for GMOs to coexist with organic.
And I would just simply say this: what we're trying to do at USDA is we're trying to figure out how genetically modified operations can coexist with organic operations, because at this point in time, folks are deeply concerned that there may be a risk of contamination.
Yes, I'm thrilled that the Secretary of Agriculture is talking about coexistence 20 years down the road since GMOs have been planted.
Right.
This is something they should have been speaking about 20 years ago before GMOs were ever planted. To begin talking about coexistence now is a little too late. And now what they want to try to do is use coexistence and cross-contamination against us and against our ability to get labeling, because what they're saying is it's a complicated issue.
Right.
Apparently it's not too complicated for 62 other countries to already figure out how to have labeling,
right,
but too complicated for the United States. And they can't use the fact that there's cross-contamination going on and problems with coexistence against us. We deserve to know it's in our food, and we're not talking about accidental contamination. We're talking about knowingly using GMOs. That's what we want labeled.
Right, right. And I think he also talked about how we're trying to get a free trade agreement going with Europe right now.
Yes.
It would seem that this would be against that, because Europe has rejected, for a large part, GMOs.
As we become more global, we're dealing right now with discussions with the EU on a free trade agreement. There may be issues that crop up on this issue in terms of that free trade agreement. So it's evolving.
Right. I was very surprised he brought that up in relation to the free trade agreement, because that is going to be a stumbling block for the United States when we want to become more global and have free trade with Europe. For instance, Israel will not grow GMOs and will not put GMOs in their product because they know that Europe is their biggest market, and Europe will not accept GMOs. So if the United States wants to have global opportunities for trade and sale, we had better start to think about getting GMOs out of our products, because it will prevent us from really achieving free trade agreements throughout the world.
Right. And it seemed like he was speaking more for the biotech industry than he was for American agriculture, which should be his job.
I have to tell you that to see that kind of honestly corruption in my own backyard in Connecticut, where the Secretary of Agriculture, who's not even an elected official, is just speaking the opposition's propaganda and not speaking from the perspective of our government, was very frightening to me. And as you can tell, it angered me a great deal. He even at the end said that if a law passes in Connecticut, there would be litigation.
The problem that's going to occur is if individual states do this, it's going to create some serious issues relative to the trading of agricultural products that are produced in California, or in Connecticut, produced in Washington. They have a referendum now. California rejected their referendum. it's going to create some interesting trade issues and interesting commerce issues. And my guess is that the legislation, if passed here, will probably be the subject of some litigation, so we can figure out if it actually is enforceable or not. Complicated, very complicated issue.
Well, that's something the opposition tells us. That's not something our government should be telling us.
And I mean, if there's litigation, there's going to be litigation. Why should that prevent you from doing the right thing?
It shouldn't. And in fact, the Attorney General, George Jepsen, just told us that if Connecticut is sued, they will defend the state.
Well, it's you know, very interesting that somebody like this came into our state, and this came up, and we'll see. I mean, the bill is still making its way through the legislature.
Yes, we still have some time. We have 2 months to get the bill passed.
Okay.
It is very interesting that the Secretary of Agriculture came right now, and it's also very interesting that Governor Malloy brought up GMOs. It was a press conference to talk about healthy food in schools, not GMOs, and yet, as Governor Malloy was introducing Secretary Vilsack, he actually brought it up.
There is other discussions with this, which the Secretary and I have had, for instance, on the issue of GMO. It's an important issue. We both acknowledge that. It has ramifications for our farmers and food processors. It is so important that I believe that the federal government must become involved in the issue and give great guidance on this. He assures me that his department is looking at that issue, and we will continue to work on this issue together, and I appreciate that as well.
So a question was asked of Secretary Vilsack, how are you working on GMO labeling? But in the end, if you watch what Secretary Vilsack said, he said that he believes there's no need to label.
And if you look at the philosophy of labeling, you got to ask yourself, is it nutrition? Not in the sense of calories and sodium and carbohydrates and the kind of stuff that you see on the nutrition label. Is it unsafe? Scientists would say it's not. So it doesn't fit within the traditional category of why we label things. And we always have the organic label now that's available.
So the federal government essentially said, we're not labeling, which really sends a signal to Governor Malloy, Connecticut needs to label. The citizens of Connecticut have a right to know what's in our food, and we cannot expect the federal government to do it for us. Secretary Vilsack actually said they're not going to do it for us.
Well, you know, people watching, you know, what can they do? You said there's a couple of months that we've got to work with here. What do you recommend that they do to try to affect this?
Sure, there are many steps people can take. Please call your legislators, call your state representatives, call your state senators, and tell them how much GMO labeling means to you and why. We also need people calling Governor Malloy's office and asking him to take a leadership role. His office is telling people as they call your representative, there's nothing the governor can do. We know that that's not true. The governor can take a leadership role in GMO labeling at any time. So we are urging the governor, please stand up for Connecticut citizens and their right to know what's in their food, and take a leadership role and say that Connecticut wants to give their citizens the right to know.
Well, thanks for talking with us, and thanks for leading this effort. It was very important, and we hope people will take some action.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me on.